The Galactic Academy of Interspecies Studies floated in the darkness of space like a giant silver flower. It was the biggest school in the known universe. Young beings from hundreds of different planets came here to learn about each other. They studied languages, cultures, and the history of all the species that lived among the stars. Instructor Velith walked into his classroom with his usual proud smile. He was a tall being with see-through skin that glowed soft blue. He had 4 thin arms and large black eyes that never blinked. He taught the most popular class at the academy, Extinct Species and Dead Worlds. Today, 30 students sat in their floating chairs, waiting for his lesson. They came from all corners of the galaxy. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some were made of living crystal. They all looked different, but they shared one thing. They all believed they were the lucky ones. They had evolved on safe, gentle planets where life was easy. Velith touched a button, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It showed a dark, stormy planet covered in oceans and forests. "Class," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "Today we discuss the saddest chapter in galactic history, the Deathworlds." The students leaned forward with interest. Deathworlds were famous in galactic legend. They were planets so dangerous, so violent, that nothing intelligent could survive on them for long. Deathworlds, Velith continued, are planets where everything tries to kill you. The weather is extreme. The animals are savage. Even the plants can be deadly. For millions of years, we believed that no thinking species could evolve on such terrible places. He changed the image. Now it showed strange animals with sharp teeth and powerful bodies. A wolf, a lion, a great white shark. These are examples of Deathworld predators, Velith said. Mindless killing machines. They knew only hunger and violence. The species that evolved alongside them were just as brutal. A student raised a tentacle. "Instructor, did any intelligent life ever come from Deathworlds?" Velith's smile grew wider. "A few. Very few. But they never lasted long. Their violent nature destroyed them. They either killed each other or ruined their own planets. Deathworlders are long extinct. The universe is better for it." Some students nodded in agreement. Others looked relieved. In the very back of the classroom, a young man sat quietly. His name was James Park. He looked boring compared to the other students. He had no scales, no glowing skin, no extra limbs. Just brown eyes, black hair, and a calm face that showed no emotion. James listened to every word Velith said. He watched the images of wolves and lions on the screen. He recognized them immediately. He had grown up with pictures of these animals in books. He had visited zoos where their descendants still lived. Because James was from Earth, and Earth was a death world. He said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence was the safest choice. When he first arrived at the academy 2 years ago, he quickly understood the truth. The galaxy thought humans were dead. Earth's records had been lost in something called the Great Data Purge 300 years ago. The Galactic Council simply assumed that humans, like other Deathworld species, had destroyed themselves. James saw no reason to correct them. He was not the only human at the academy. His best friend, a quiet young man named David Lee, sat 3 rows ahead. David was thin and shy. He spoke softly and avoided attention. The other students called him Whisper because of his gentle voice. David and James had found each other in their first week at the academy. They recognized something in each other that no alien could see. The way they moved, the way they breathed, the way their eyes tracked motion just a little too quickly. They were predators pretending to be prey. After class ended, James waited until the room was empty. Then he walked to a quiet corner of the station where few students went. David was already there, sitting on a bench near a window that showed the stars. Another lesson about how terrible we are, David said with a small, sad smile. James sat beside him. He showed wolves today, called them mindless killing machines. David laughed softly. Wolves, the animals we turned into dogs. Our best friends for 30,000 years. He doesn't know, James said. None of them know. They think we killed everything on our planet. They don't understand that we also saved things, protected things, loved things. David looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, very far away, was a small blue planet. Their home. A world of storms and earthquakes, of predators and diseases, of ice ages and meteor strikes. A world that had tried to kill humanity every single day for 200,000 years. And humanity had survived it all. How long do we keep pretending? David asked. James thought about this question for a long time. He thought about Instructor Velith and his proud smile. He thought about the other students who flinched when they saw images of Earth animals. He thought about the Galactic Council and their belief that Deathworlders were monsters. As long as we have to, he finally answered. 3 days later, James met the third human at the academy. Her name was Emma Wilson. She was a medical student with sharp eyes and quick hands. James noticed her in the cafeteria, the way she ate her food with a focus that seemed almost predatory. The way she sat with her back to the wall so she could see all the exits. He approached her carefully, speaking in English. You're from Earth, aren't you? Emma's eyes went wide with shock. Then with fear. Then with something that looked like relief. How did you know? She whispered. The way you move, James said. The way you watch everything. You're a hunter, even when you're just eating lunch. Emma stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. 3 of us, she said quietly. Are there more? James looked around the cafeteria at all the alien students. They were laughing and talking, completely unaware that 3 Deathworlders sat among them. I don't know, he admitted, but I think we're about to find out. None of them knew that in just 2 weeks, their secret would be impossible to keep. An accident would happen. A predator would escape. And James would have to choose between staying hidden and saving innocent lives. He would choose to save lives. He would always choose to save lives. That was what humans did. That was what made them different from the monsters in Instructor Velith's lessons. They were predators, yes, but they were also protectors. The galaxy just didn't know it yet. The announcement came on a bright Monday morning. Every student at the Galactic Academy received the same message on their communication devices. The Academy was organizing a special field trip to Varth Prime, the most famous nature preserve in the galaxy. Instructor Velith would lead the trip personally. James. Read the message 3 times. Varth Prime was home to animals from hundreds of different worlds. Some were gentle and beautiful. Others were dangerous predators kept behind powerful energy barriers. It was supposed to be completely safe. James had learned long ago that nothing was ever completely safe. He met David and Emma in their usual quiet corner of the station. David looked worried. Emma looked curious. Should we go? David asked. What if something happens? What if we have to... He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Emma crossed her arms. We've been hiding for years. One field trip won't change anything. Besides, I want to see these aliens animals up close. I want to compare them to Earth creatures. James thought about it carefully. 50 students would go on this trip. If something went wrong, those students might need help. The aliens were smart and creative, but they had evolved on safe worlds. They had never learned to face real danger. Humans had spent their entire history facing danger. It was in their blood. We go, James decided. But we stay alert. We watch everything. The transport ship left the academy the next morning. It was a beautiful vessel with large windows that showed the stars sliding past. 50 students sat in comfortable seats, talking excitedly about what they would see. Instructor Velith walked up and down the aisle, sharing facts about Vareth Prime. He seemed even more proud than usual. The preserve covers an entire continent, he explained. Every animal there is studied and protected. The energy barriers are the strongest in the galaxy. Nothing can escape. Nothing can get in. You are perfectly safe. James sat near the back with David and Emma. They listened politely but said nothing. They had heard promises of safety before. On Earth, safety was never guaranteed. It was something you fought for every single day. The transport landed on Vareth Prime 2 hours later. The students stepped out onto a platform surrounded by crystal trees that sparkled in the sunlight. The air smelled sweet and clean. Colorful birds flew overhead, singing songs that sounded like music. Beautiful, David whispered. Emma nodded, but her eyes were scanning the area, looking for threats, looking for escape routes. She could not help it. It was instinct. James did the same thing. He noticed the security guards standing at the edges of the platform. He noticed the emergency exits built into the nearby buildings. He noticed the slight hum of the energy barriers in the distance. Instructor Velith gathered the students and began the tour. They walked through forests of glowing plants and meadows filled with gentle creatures. They saw animals that floated through the air like balloons. They saw creatures made of living light. They saw things that Earth humans had never imagined, but they also saw the predator enclosures. These were different. The energy barriers here were thicker, stronger. Warning signs flashed in a dozen languages. The creatures inside were not gentle or beautiful. They were hunters. Do not worry, Velith said as they approached the largest enclosure. These barriers have never failed in 200 years of operation. You are completely safe. Inside the enclosure was the Korath. James felt his breath catch in his throat. The Korath was massive. It stood 6 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed at least 600 pounds. It had gray skin covered in thick scales, 4 powerful legs, and a head full of teeth longer than James's fingers. Its eyes were yellow and cold, like the eyes of a crocodile. It was beautiful in the way that all predators were beautiful, dangerous and perfect. The Korath comes from a mid-tier danger world, Velith explained. It is not a Deathworld creature, but it is still extremely dangerous. Observe how it respects the barrier. It understands that it cannot escape. This is the difference between civilized predators and Deathworld monsters. Deathworld creatures never learned to accept boundaries. They only knew violence. James said nothing, but he thought about wolves again. Wolves understood territory. Wolves understood rules. Wolves could be taught, trained, loved. Instructor Velith knew nothing about real predators. The tour continued. More enclosures. More amazing creatures. The students took pictures and asked questions. Everyone was having a wonderful time. Then the lights flickered. It happened so fast that most students did not even notice. Just a brief flash like a blink. But James noticed. So did David and Emma. They exchanged quick looks. Something was wrong. A few minutes later, the group returned to the Korath enclosure. Velith wanted to show them how the creature was fed. He pressed a button on a control panel, and a small door opened in the barrier. A piece of meat slid through on a tray. The Korath ignored the food. It was staring at the barrier, watching it closely. Interesting, Velith said. It seems distracted today. Perhaps it senses the new visitors. Do not worry. The barrier is perfectly. The barrier flickered again. This time, everyone saw it and then it died. The blue light of the energy field disappeared completely. For one terrible second, nothing happened. The Korath just stood there, confused. Then it understood. The massive predator stepped forward, crossing the line where the barrier had been. Its yellow eyes swept across the crowd of students. It saw 50 small, soft creatures. It saw prey. Panic exploded. Students screamed and ran in every direction. Some tried to climb trees. Others fell over each other, trying to escape. A young student, barely old enough to be at the academy, froze in absolute terror. She was small and fragile, with thin blue wings that shook with fear. The chorus eyes locked onto her. The weakest target. The easiest kill. It began to move toward her, slowly at first, then faster. Instructor Velith stood frozen. His forearms hung limp at his sides. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He had never faced real danger in his entire life. He did not know what to do. But James knew. He had faced predators before. Not like this one, but close enough. He had gone camping in mountains where bears lived. He had swum in oceans where sharks hunted. He had grown up on a planet where danger was everywhere. He knew what to do. James stepped forward, putting himself between the Korath and the terrified child. He stood tall and straight, making himself as large as possible. He did not run. He did not scream. He just stood there, calm and steady, looking directly into the predator's eyes. The Korath stopped. It tilted its massive head, confused by this strange little creature that did not act like prey. Behind him, James heard David moving quietly toward the frozen child. He heard Emma guiding other students to safety. His friends understood. They were working together, just like humans had always worked together when facing danger. Now, James had to do the hardest thing of all. He had to calm a monster. The Korath was only 20 feet away. James could see every detail of the creature. The scales on its skin were thick and gray, like armor. Its claws dug into the soft ground with each step. Its breath came out in hot clouds that smelled like meat and blood. Every cell in James's body screamed at him to run. This was an ancient fear, passed down from ancestors who had faced lions on the African plains and wolves in frozen forests. The fear was real. The danger was real. But James had something his ancestors never had. He had knowledge. He had understanding. He had 10,000 years of human experience with predators. He knew that running was the worst thing he could do. Predators chased things that ran. It was instinct. Movement triggered the hunting response. If James ran, the Korath would chase. It was faster than him, stronger than him. He would die, and then it would kill the child behind him. So James did not run. He stood perfectly still. He took a slow, deep breath and let it out slowly. His heart was pounding fast, but he forced it to slow down. Humans were unique in the galaxy. They could control their own bodies in ways that other species could not. They could lower their heart rate. They could calm their breathing. They could choose to be still when every instinct screamed to flee. The Korath watched him carefully. Its yellow eyes were intelligent, curious. It had never seen anything like this before. Every other creature it had ever met had either run away in terror or attacked in desperation. This small, soft being did neither. James raised one hand slowly, palm facing outward. It was a universal gesture, something that predators across many worlds seemed to understand. It meant, "I am not a threat." "Easy," James said, his voice low and steady. "Easy now." The words did not matter. The Korath could not understand human language. But the tone mattered. The calmness mattered. Animals could sense fear. They could smell it in sweat, hear it in trembling voices. James gave the Korath nothing to sense. He was calm. He was in control. The Korath took another step forward, but slower now. It was testing him, seeing if he would break. James did not break. "I know you're scared," he said softly. The barrier went down, and now everything is strange. You don't know what's happening. You don't know if you're in danger. Behind him, he could hear David reaching the frozen child. He heard David's gentle voice, speaking quietly in English. "It's okay. Don't move. Don't make any sounds. We're going to be fine." The child was too terrified to respond, but David carefully picked her up. She was light, fragile. Her thin blue wings pressed against David's chest as he slowly, carefully, backed away. On the other side of the clearing, Emma was doing what she did best. She was organizing the chaos. She gathered the panicking students into small groups. She pointed them toward emergency exits. She moved with purpose and confidence, showing no fear. The other students followed her because she seemed to know what she was doing. And she did know. Humans have been leaders in times of crisis for thousands of years. James kept his eyes on the Korath. The creature had stopped moving forward. It stood just 10 feet away, its massive head tilted to one side. It was thinking, deciding. James understood predators. He understood that violence was usually the last choice, not the first. Hunting was dangerous. Even for apex predators, a fight could mean injury. Injury could mean death. Smart predators only attacked when they were sure of victory. The Korath was not sure anymore. "That's it," James said, taking a small step forward. "Not backward, forward. See? I'm not running. I'm not fighting. There's no reason for us to hurt each other." The Korath made a low sound deep in its throat. It was not a growl. It was not a warning. It was something else. Confusion, maybe. Or curiosity. James took another step forward. He was close enough now to touch the creature if he reached out his hand. He could smell its breath. He could see the intelligence in its yellow eyes. "You're not a monster," James said. "You're just an animal trying to survive. I understand that. My planet is full of creatures just like you. We learn to live with them. We learn to respect them." He slowly raised his hand toward the Korath's face. This was the most dangerous moment. If the creature attacked now, James would die instantly. There would be no time to react, but James trusted his instincts. He trusted what he knew about predators. The Korath did not attack. Instead, it leaned forward slightly, sniffing James's hand. Its breath was hot against his skin. Its eyes never left his face. For a long moment, human and alien predator looked at each other. Two hunters from different worlds, meeting for the first time, understanding each other in ways that the other species could never understand. Then the Korath lowered its head. It was not submission. Predators did not submit. It was recognition. It was acceptance. The Korath had decided that James was not prey. James was something else. Something equal. "Come on," James said softly, slowly moving his hand to the side of the creature's face. "Let's get you back home." He began to walk toward the enclosure. The Korath walked beside him, matching his pace. Its massive body moved with the easy grace of a creature completely at peace. Behind them, Instructor Velith finally found his voice. That's impossible," he whispered. But it was not impossible. It was human. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. They had tamed wolves into dogs. They had ridden horses across continents. They had swum with whales and walked with elephants. They had taken the most dangerous creatures on their planet and formed bonds with them, not through violence, not through dominance, through understanding, through patience, through something that humans called compassion. James led the Korath back into its enclosure just as the security team arrived. They came running with weapons and emergency barriers, ready for a fight that had already ended. They found a young human standing beside a massive predator, gently stroking its scaled head. "The barrier failed," James said calmly. "You should probably fix that. The security team stared at him with wide eyes. They had never seen anything like this. No species in their records could do what this young student had just done. When the emergency barrier finally hummed back to life, the Korath looked at James one last time. There was something in its eyes that looked almost like gratitude. Then it walked into its enclosure and lay down. Calm and peaceful. James turned around and walked back to his friends. David was still holding the child, who had finally stopped shaking. Emma had gathered all the students into a safe area. No one was hurt. No one had died. Instructor Veleth stood frozen in the middle of the clearing, staring at James with an expression of complete shock. "What are you?" he asked, his voice barely audible. James looked at his friends. David gave him a small nod. Emma shrugged her shoulders as if to say, "Might as well tell them now." James turned back to Veleth. "My name is James Park," he said. "I come from a planet called Earth. It is a death world. And we are not extinct." Within hours of the incident at Vareth Prime, every communication network in the galaxy was talking about the same thing. A student had calmed the escaped predator with nothing but his voice and his hands. Medical scans had revealed something impossible. The student was from a death world. Humans were not extinct. Humans were alive. And humans had been living among the other species for years. The Galactic Academy went into immediate lockdown. Security officers surrounded James, David, and Emma. They were not arrested, but they were not free to leave either. They were taken to a special room deep inside the station and told to wait. James waited calmly. He had expected this. The medical scans had been very thorough. The doctors had found everything. They found that human blood contained iron, a metal that was toxic to most species. They found that human bones were dense and strong, designed to survive falls and impacts that would kill other beings. They found that humans had redundant organs, 2 kidneys and 2 lungs, in case one failed. They found that humans were designed by evolution to survive anything. The chief medical officer was a small being with silver fur and large purple eyes. Her hand shook as she read her report to a room full of officials. "Class 12 Deathworld signatures," she said. "The highest classification we have. Their planet has extreme temperature changes, violent weather, powerful predators, and toxic plants. By our calculations, they should not exist. They should have died millions of years ago." An official leaned forward. "How did they survive?" The medical officer looked at James with something like wonder. "They adapted. They overcame. They are the most resilient species in our records." 2 days later, the Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. James, David, and Emma were brought before the council chamber. It was a massive room, filled with floating platforms, where representatives from over 100 worlds sat watching them. James had never felt so small. But he also knew he had never been stronger. The council leader was an ancient being made of living crystal. Light passed through its body, creating rainbows on the floor. Its voice was deep and echoing. "You are humans," it said. "Your species was believed dead for 300 years. Explain yourselves." James stepped forward. David and Emma stood beside him, showing unity. "Earth was never destroyed," James said, his voice clear and steady. "Our records were lost in what you call the Great Data Purge. After that, you stopped looking for us. You assumed we had killed ourselves like other Deathworld species, and you did not correct this assumption?" Another council member demanded. This one had a long neck and feathers like a peacock. "No," James admitted. "Your ancestors made it very clear the Deathworlders were not welcome in galactic society. They called us monsters. They said we were too dangerous, too violent, too primitive. So we stayed quiet. We stayed home." Emma spoke next. Her voice was cold and sharp. "But we never stopped growing. We never stopped learning. Earth survived everything. Ice ages, meteor strikes, diseases, wars. We survived it all. And eventually, we started exploring again, quietly. David finished the thought, his soft voice carrying through the silent chamber. We wanted to see if things had changed. We wanted to know if you were ready to accept us. The council chamber erupted into noise. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded that the humans be arrested. Others demanded more information. The noise was overwhelming. The council leader raised one crystalline arm, and silence fell. How many humans exist? It asked. James took a deep breath. This was the question he had been waiting for. Millions, he said, scattered across the galaxy. We work as doctors, engineers, teachers, artists. We have been contributing to your society for decades. You just never knew what we were. Horror spread across many faces in the chamber. Millions of Deathworlders living among them, hiding in plain sight. But the council leader did not look horrified. It looked thoughtful. If there are millions of you, it said slowly, and you have been among us for decades, why have you caused no harm? The records say Deathworlders are violent and unstable. Yet your people have lived peacefully. James smiled sadly. Because your records are wrong. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as he could. Yes, our planet is dangerous. Yes, we evolved to survive terrible things. But that same struggle taught us something that your species never needed to learn. He paused, letting the silence build. Compassion, he said finally. When everything wants to kill you, you learn to value life. When death is always close, you learn to protect the weak. When you face predators every day, you learn that kindness is more powerful than violence. David stepped forward. We did not tame our predators by destroying them. We tamed them by understanding them. We made peace with wolves. We formed bonds with horses. We learned to live with the dangerous creatures on our world instead of simply killing them. Emma nodded. That is what makes us different from the monsters in your stories. We are predators, yes, but we are also protectors. We cannot help it. It is in our nature. The chamber was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, slowly, Instructor Velith stood up from his seat in the observer section. I was there, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I saw what this human did. The Korath was going to kill a child. Every other being in that clearing was frozen with fear. But this human walked toward the predator. He calmed it with nothing but patience and gentleness. He saved that child's life. He looked at James with new eyes. Eyes that held no more arrogance, only respect. I have spent my career teaching that Deathworlders were monsters, Velith continued. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. The council leader considered this for a long moment. Then it turned back to James. What do you want? It asked, what do humans want from the galaxy? James thought about all the humans scattered across the stars. The doctors saving lives. The engineers building things. The teachers helping young minds grow. All of them hiding, pretending to be something they were not. We want to be ourselves, James said simply. We want to stop hiding. We want to show you who we really are. Not the monsters from your old stories. The real us. The humans who protect, who build, who heal, who love. He held out his hand, palm up. A gesture of openness. A gesture of peace. We want to be your friends, he said. If you will let us. The council leader looked at his hand for a long moment. Then, slowly it extended one crystalline arm and placed it gently on James's palm. Then let us begin. It said Don, and for the first time in 300 years, humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy. 1 year had passed since the day the galaxy learned that humans still existed. It had not been easy. Some species were afraid. They had grown up hearing stories about Deathworlders, terrible tales of violence and destruction. They looked at humans with suspicion and fear. Some planets even banned humans from entering their space. But slowly, things began to change. Across the galaxy, humans started to reveal themselves. A doctor on a distant space station admitted that she was from Earth. Her patients were shocked at first, but then they remembered how gentle her hands were, how carefully she had treated them. A teacher at a children's school told his students the truth about his home planet. The children were frightened for a moment, then curious and fascinated. Story by story, the galaxy began to understand. James Park became something of a celebrity, though he hated the attention. News networks wanted to interview him. Scientists wanted to study him. Politicians wanted to use him for their own purposes. He refused almost everything. He just wanted to be a student again. The Galactic Academy reopened 3 months after the incident at Vareth Prime. James returned to his classes, but everything was different now. The other students looked at him with new eyes. Some were still afraid. Others were curious. A few wanted to be his friend. Instructor Veleth was different too. His arrogance was gone. He had resigned from teaching extinct species and dead worlds, and requested to learn from the human students instead. The Academy created a new class for him to teach, interspecies understanding. I spent my whole career making judgments about species I had never met, Veleth admitted to James one day. I taught fear instead of knowledge. I taught hatred instead of understanding. I was a fool. James looked at the instructor with compassion. This was not easy for Veleth. Admitting mistakes never was. The important thing is that you changed, James said. Humans make mistakes too. We have made terrible mistakes in our history, but we learn from them. That's what matters. Veleth bowed his head slightly. A gesture of gratitude that meant more than words. David and Emma had changed too. David was no longer the quiet, shy student who avoided attention. He had discovered a talent for diplomacy. His gentle voice and patient manner made him perfect for helping other species understand humans. He spent most of his time traveling between worlds, giving lectures and answering questions. Emma had found her calling in medicine. She combined human knowledge with galactic technology to develop new treatments that saved thousands of lives. Her iron blood, once seen as dangerous, became the key to curing a disease that had killed millions. But the biggest change was in the galaxy itself. For the first time in history, other species began to look at predators differently. They started asking questions they had never asked before. Maybe violence was not the only truth about dangerous creatures. Maybe there was room for understanding. Maybe fear could be replaced with curiosity. On the anniversary of the Korath incident, James returned to Vareth Prime. He had fought hard to save the creature's life. After the barrier failure, the preserve managers wanted to kill the Korath. They said it was too dangerous. They said it could never be trusted again. James had argued for hours. He had explained that the Korath was not a monster. It was just a frightened animal that had reacted to a strange situation. With proper care and understanding, it could live peacefully. Eventually, they listened. The Korath now lived in a larger, more natural enclosure. The barriers were stronger, but the environment was better. There were trees and water and space to run. It was still a captive creature, but it was treated with respect. James walked to the observation platform alone. The sun was setting over the preserve, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In the distance, he could see the Korath moving through the trees. The creature saw him too. It stopped and looked at him with those intelligent yellow eyes. Then it walked toward the observation barrier. James pressed his hand against the transparent material. The Korath lowered its massive head and pressed against the same spot from the other side. Two predators. Two survivors. Understanding each other perfectly. "Hello, old friend," James said softly. The chorus made that low sound again, the one James had heard a year ago. Not a growl, not a warning. Something like recognition. Something like welcome. Behind James, a group of young students watched in amazement. They were on a field trip, just like James had been a year ago. Their instructor was explaining what they were seeing. James recognized the instructor. It was a being who had once been terrified of humans. Now she spoke about them with wonder. Deathworlders, she said, and the word held no scorn this time, only respect. Understand predators, because they are predators themselves. But more importantly, they understand that strength means nothing without gentleness. Violence means nothing without mercy. She pointed at James and the chorus. That human saved this creature's life. Not by fighting, not by running, by understanding, by showing compassion. This is what humans can teach us. This is why they matter. The students watched as James gently spoke to the chorus through the barrier. The creature was calm, peaceful, almost happy. One young student raised a tentacle. Can we do that too? Can we learn to understand predators like humans do? The instructor smiled. That is exactly why we are here. To learn. James finally stepped back from the barrier. The chorus watched him go, then turned and walked back into the trees. Their meeting was over, but their bond remained. James walked past the student group, nodding politely to the instructor. She nodded back, a gesture of respect between equals. He found David and Emma waiting for him at the preserve entrance. They looked older now, more confident. The past year had changed all of them. Ready to go home? David asked. James looked back at the preserve one last time. Then he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were living, working, making the galaxy a better place. They were no longer hiding. They were no longer afraid. Yeah, James said with a smile. Let's go home. As they walked toward their transport, Emma put a hand on James's shoulder. You know what the strangest thing is? She said. What? They spent thousands of years afraid of us. Afraid of what we might do. Afraid of our violence, our aggression, our survival instincts. She shook her head slowly. They never stopped to think that maybe those same instincts would make us want to protect them. James nodded. He had thought about this many times. Humans were predators. They had sharp minds and persistent bodies. They could hunt for days without stopping. They could survive wounds that would kill other species. They were born from a planet that tried to kill them every single day. But that was not all they were. They were also the species that adopted abandoned animals. They were the ones who ran toward danger to save strangers. They were the ones who looked at a universe full of fear and said, "We can do better." The galaxy had called them monsters. But the galaxy had been wrong. Humans were not monsters. Humans were guardians. And now, finally, the galaxy understood. James stepped onto the transport with his friends and watched through the window as Varith Prime grew smaller below them. Soon they would return to the academy. Soon they would continue their studies, continue their work, continue building bridges between species. There was still so much to do, so many minds to change, so much fear to overcome. But James was not worried. He had seen what humans could accomplish. He had seen predators become protectors. He had seen enemies become friends. He had seen the impossible become possible. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be.